Good day, everybody. And it is a pretty good day. I'm recording this on Sunday and just been to the coffee shop, which is now open, and things are slowly getting back to normal, and it's awesome. It feels like my world is returning to where it should be. Awesome. I hope yours is doing likewise. Today we're going to do a review, a comprehension review, something we skipped because it's not something that works terribly well outside of a classroom. I've done it before, and to get it to really work well, I like to have somebody come up to the front of the class and do a demonstration with me. And it really does kind of work. It's something that's a lot of fun. It's something everybody laughs at, and it makes it work. So when we looked at it in the book, and I thought, oh, no, I don't want to teach this online. So we skipped this and we did something else instead. Unfortunately, it might be in the exam, might. So we're going to go back and we're going to cover it by doing the comprehension exercise from the book. Now it's not perfect, but we've got to cover it, and you've got to make sure that you know the rules and how all these things work. So what it is it's handshakes. Now all the details are on the on Google Classroom, page numbers, all that kind of stuff. Can't remember off the top of my head, but it's right there. Also, if you haven't got your book, the photographs are there as well. So handshakes are obviously a way we initiate greeting, especially for men. With women it's a bit more hairy. I don't even know how you're supposed to initiate a physical greeting with a woman. I've never really been sure about that. In a business setting, what seems to be the norm these days is to shake hands, just as if it was a man greeting a man. But often, even in business, when you do that, women get a little awkward about it. They're not used to having their hands shaken because it's a connection on equal terms, and a lot of women just don't feel that. I mean, feminism, we're all supposed to be equal now, but everyone knows that's nonsense. So it doesn't happen. You certainly don't want to go in and give them a kiss on both cheeks like they do in France, because France is weird. French people are weird. So we don't do that. So normally a handshake is consigned to two men, usually men who are greeting each other for the first time, or are not used to meeting each other, or in another way of communicating their greeting to one another. There are lots of things to look for in handshakes. A handshake isn't just two people reaching out their hand, grabbing one another and shaking them. There is a lot more to it than that, and that's what this section in the book is all about. Handshakes communicate a lot about the attitude of the person giving them. It's another form of body language. And it's something that isn't consciously usually controlled. Now, we normally find the idea of a firm handshake being a marker of a strong man. You know, a strong, firm handshake, dry hand. That signifies that the man is confident and powerful. The problem is everyone knows that, and everybody fakes it. I'm sure you've all done it at some point. You reach out, you shake hands, and you squeeze just as hard as you can so that you're showing your dominance. And of course, it means nothing psychologically because you're consciously doing it. But what we can infer from that is that the person is trying to look stronger than they really are. So it's always a warning if someone grabs your hand and squeezes really hard that they're actually emotionally quite fragile. So it's usually a marker that you're going to win this competition. They're trying to intimidate you. So what you're looking for with a handshake, the first thing you want to spot is how the hand comes out to greet you. Now, if somebody reaches out their hand, there's three different ways that they could do it. If their hand comes out straight like that, that means they're greeting you as an equal. It means dead straight down the line. They don't see themselves as better or worse than you. They're giving you the chance to meet them as an equal. This is how I reach out my hand to shake someone's hand. I reach out straight and I treat them as an equal. If the hand is up this way, they're submissive. They're offering you the chance to take control of the meeting. If a customer does that, you've sold your product already, even before you've described it. They're offering you the chance to take control. If they reach out that way round, they are trying to take control of you. They want to be on top. Now, although that sounds like a very on-the-nose description, it works. Somebody doing it equally is trying to treat you as an equal. Now, this is something we want to see in a business meeting, that person is willing to see you on the same terms that they expect you to see them. That's nice. That's what we want. If somebody puts their hand, the further they bend over, the more they are trying to dominate the situation. Now, if we see that from a salesman, it's an instant red light. It's a warning. We don't want to see that. We don't want to see it from our boss because we know that guy thinks he's in charge. we need to keep our bosses under control, probably more than anybody else. So it's a warning. We don't want too much of that. One way, and this happened to me once. The guy did that, put out his hand like that, and he was just an idiot. And I put my hand on top of his and shook on top of his, and it just destroyed him. He didn't know what to do. He just went bright red. Yeah. And I defeated him simply by defeating his handshake. Because people like that are weak. They think they're in charge, and they can't deal with not being in charge. So again, handshakes are a kind of communication, and it gives you a lot of information about the sort of person that you're meeting and their initial attitudes, and it gives you a chance to take control. If you know what you're looking for, you can take control of the situation. So watch the handshake very carefully. The way its greetings is extended to you tells you a lot about the person and the way they feel. Is it a confident person who thinks they're in charge? Is it a submissive person that wants to hand over control? If your boss reaches out with an open palm like that, that's a warning sign that they shouldn't be a boss. They're not the right attitude. They're not looking to be in control of the situation. So watch out for that. Then, of course, you've got the different kinds of handshake. If somebody reaches out and they don't grasp at all, they're nervous, they don't want to be in this situation, it's a fake handshake, and it's true. I've done this with a lot of different people. Someone's selling coconuts very loudly. And the people who, I've known some friends who have got emotional problems, like they're not very good at connecting with other people, and in every case they have a weak handshake where they don't really grip on. They just put out their hand and they let you do the work. They're not really interested in the greeting. They're nervous. They're finding it difficult to connect with you. If they grip too hard, in most cases, again, it shows weakness. It shows that they're trying to look too strong, and that's easy to break down. I have also shook hands with some people whose hands are just ridiculously powerful. You know, they're like twice the size of mine. They're like giant lumps of ham, and they could break every bone in your hand. Those kind of people, you take them seriously. A big, strong guy like that, if he's shaking your hand with a big smile on his face, you've got nothing to worry about. If he's glaring at you, and yeah, you're in trouble. But normally, the difference between a limp handshake and a strong handshake shows confidence. And the only reason you're going to be able to spot the difference between someone faking it and someone doing it for real is experience. So shake a lot of hands, get used to the idea of it, so that in a real meeting, you know the difference between somebody that's faking a strong handshake and a real strong handshake. It's important to know the difference. Then we've got sweat levels. Now, sweat, as you know, is a marker of nervousness. A nervous person will start to sweat. But everyone does it to different degrees. Don't look at two people in a room and assume that one of them is sweating and that tells you he's more nervous than the other one, because everybody sweats differently. For instance, I don't sweat that much out here, but I did when I first got here because I come from a cold country. So it's not good to look at me and say, he's sweating a lot, he's nervous. No, I'm in a situation I'm not used to. So be careful when you judge someone by the amount of sweat. But sweaty palms are a very good sign of nervousness. Okay, so if it's a wet, nervous handshake, if he's not gripping at all, and if he's handing it submissive, you basically could take control of the situation. It's yours to take control of. Some people grip hard. They wrap their fingers around. They embrace the handshake. Some people don't. But all of these kind of things lead up to an impression. Okay. Now with body language. Each of these things is a word in a sentence. Don't take any of them on their own. If somebody hands you their hand like this, but it's dry, and then they grip really hard, all of those things have to be taken into account. Each of those are a word, and what you're looking for is to make sense of the sentence, okay? So when you look at a handshake, be aware that it's not just somebody reaching out and gripping your hand. It's somebody connecting with you and communicating in a way that probably they don't understand that they're communicating. So it's a very good way for you to get inside their head and to know exactly what they're thinking within a few seconds. So it gives you a lot of information very, very quickly, and a little bit of experience will teach you how to do this, and it's a very valuable way to introduce someone to a meeting, because you're going to know exactly where you stand with this guy. If it's a man who won't shake your hand, that tells you a lot about them too, especially with the current situation. If it's someone that's bought into the whole handshakes are dangerous nonsense, then tells you a lot about who this person is. There's someone that's very easy to control, someone that doesn't think for themselves. You're going to be able to put your perspective into their head. So this is just an introduction. Now I'm going to read the text to you as usual. And then I'm going to give you a quiz that's going to cover, well, first of all, we're going to do the questions in the book. Then I'm going to give you a quiz that's going to cover some points. It's only going to have a few questions in it. And those questions, I need you to make sure that you absolutely remember. I think you understand what I'm talking about. All right, guys, let's move on to the reading. Okay, shaking hands. Page 190, if you've got the book. If you haven't got the book, then go to Google Classroom and I've given you the photographs. Now, I'm only able to photograph my book, obviously, and it's not very good. It's in black and white, so the pictures are especially bad. So, an explanation using reasons about shaking hands. Shaking hands is a relic of the caveman era. We absolutely don't know that that's true. Whenever cavemen met, they would hold their arms in the air with their palms exposed to show that no weapons were being held or concealed. That, we believe, is the root of the surrender gesture. Look, I've got no weapons. In England, we pass on the left. I know you drive on the other side here, but we pass on the left, the opposite side of the road to the way you drive, because you drive the same way as America. Japan drives the same way as us. The reason you drive on that side is because France wanted to do things differently to England. So they literally drove on the opposite side. But we've got a good reason for driving on the left, for passing on the left. We actually call it passing on the left. We don't say driving on the left. We do, we drive on the left. The reason we do that is a mark of respect. The idea is that your right hand is free to draw your weapon and fight. So it's like a mark of respect of saying that you are somebody that I take seriously and I might need to draw my weapon and confront you. So we drive on that side of the road so that we could draw a sword or a gun and fight the person approaching us. They do it the opposite way on France, which again you could argue is more respectful because we say, I don't need a gun, I don't need a weapon. You decide. But that's the reason we drive on that side of the road, having an empty palm. So an empty palm gesture is a friendly gesture. But it's very difficult to think, well, I'm sure the cavemen didn't evolve the idea of a handshake to show them they didn't have a gun or a knife when they hadn't actually invented them yet. Their palms in air gesture became modified over the centuries, and such gestures as the palm raised in the air, the palm over the heart, and numerous other variations developed. Well, we'll see. The modern form of this ancient greeting ritual is the interlocking and shaking of the palms, which is performed both on initial greeting and on departure. So a handshake. Dominant and submissive handshakes. Considering what has already been said about the impact of a command given in both the palm up and palm down positions, let us explore the relevance of these two palm positions in handshaking. Assume you've just met someone for the first time and you greet each other with a customary handshake. These are dominants. What? That doesn't make sense. This person is trying to dominate me. I'd better be cautious. Submission. I can dominate this person. He will do as I wish. And equality. I like this person. Now this needs illustration. This is poorly written. I like this person. We will get on well together. I would actually agree with that. So you've got the dominant position, which is where I shake my hands like this, and you all know someone that does that. The more over it is, the more dominant the person is, the more submissive it is, the more open it is, and this is equality. If you hand it out like this, people will generally like you. People will like you like this, but they won't respect you. These attitudes are transmitted unconsciously, and with practice and conscious application, the following handshake techniques can have an immediate effect on the outcome of a face-to-face encounter with another person. This is what I was saying before. If you do this right, you can take control of the situation. Dominance is transmitted through a handshake by turning your hand so that the palm faces down. Your palm need not be facing the floor directly, but should be facing downwards in relation to the other person's palm, and this tells him that you wish to take control of the encounter that follows. Studies of 54 successful senior management people have revealed that not only did 42 initiate the handshake, they also used the dominant handshake control. So in other words, strong, successful people don't just reach out their hand first, they take control. Be that sort of person. Just as the dog shows submission by rolling on its back and exposing its throat to the victor, so the human uses the palm up gesture to show submission to others. The reverse of the dominant handshake is to offer your hand with your palm facing upwards. This is particularly effective when you want to give the other person control or allow him to feel that he is in command of the situation. I can remember several movies where you've got the action hero reaching out to do this because the actor is actually a submissive person pretending to be a strong person, and then the body language falls apart. So it's true. It does show you a lot about the person. However, though the palm up handshake can show a submissive attitude, there may be mitigating circumstances to consider. For example, a person who has arthritis in the hand will be forced to give you a limp handshake because of the condition, and this makes it easy to turn the palm into the submissive position. So in other words, somebody might have a problem that makes it very difficult to normally control their hand. People who use their hands in their profession, such as surgeons, artists and musicians, may also give a limp handshake purely to protect their hands, maybe. The gesture that follows the handshake will give further clues for your assessment of that person. The submissive person will use submissive gestures, and the dominant person will use more aggressive gestures. When two dominant people shake hands, a symbolic struggle takes place as each person tries to turn the other's palm into the submissive position. And it's true, people will try to turn and take control. The result is a vice-like handshake with both palms remaining in the vertical position as each person transmits a feeling of respect and rapport to the others. This vice-like vertical palm grip is the handshake that a father teaches his son when he shows him how to shake hands like a man. Okay, so we've got some questions. We're going to skip those and move on and do them at the end. Although it is generally accepted custom to shake hands when meeting a person for the first time, there are some circumstances in which it might be unwise for you to initiate a handshake, like for instance if you've just been cleaning a toilet. Considering that a handshake is a sign of welcome, it's important to ask yourself several questions before you initiate ones. Am I welcome? Is this person glad to meet me? Sales trainees are taught that if they initiate the handshake when a buyer on whom they call unannounced and uninvited, it can produce a negative result as the buyer may not want to welcome them and is forced to do something he might not want to do. Again, such people as arthritics and those whose hands are their profession may become defensive if they're forced to shake hands. Under these circumstances, sales trainees are told that it's better to wait for the other person to initiate the handshake if it's not forthcoming, and to nod as a sign of greeting. If your customer initiates a handshake, then they're welcoming you in. So if they don't initiate a handshake, I would suggest opening gestures, which means undo your jacket, open it up to show that you feel welcome and that you feel you're part of the family. Big smile, polite greetings, anything that gets you through the door, basically. Try and show that you're a friendly person and that they should be welcoming you in. Handshake styles. The glove handshake is sometimes called the politician's handshake. The initiator tries to give the receiver the impression that he is trustworthy and honest, but when this technique is used on a person he's just met, it has the reverse effect. No. The receiver feels suspicious and cautious about the initiator's intentions. The glove handshake should only be used with people whom the initiator is familiar. So this is something where you shake hands and then you put your hand around them to give them a second greeting, like a hug. So it's like giving the handshake a hug. It makes you look trustworthy unless it's fake, in which case it makes you look the opposite of trustworthy. You see this a lot with fake people. Few greeting gestures are as uninviting as the dead fish handshake, particularly when the hand is cold or clammy. The soft, placid feel of a dead fish makes it universally unpopular, and most people relate it to weak character, mainly because of the ease with which the palm can be turned up. Surprisingly, many people who use the dead fish are unaware they do so, and it's wise to ask your friends to comment on your own handshake delivery before deciding which style you will use. So the dead fish is when you reach out your hand, don't provide a proper greeting, you're sweaty, you're nervous, it's cold, it's just dead. There's no warmth to it. The knuckle grinder is the trademark of the aggressive, tough guy type. Unfortunately, there are no effective ways to counter it apart from verbal abuse or physical action. The stiff arm thrust tends to be used by aggressive types, and its main purpose is to keep you at a distance and out of the initiator's intimate zone. It is also used by people brought up in countries who have a larger intimate zone to protect. With country folk, however, there is a tendency to lean forward or even balance on one's foot when delivering the stiff arm thrust, as they try to keep as far away from the receiver as possible when offering a handshake. That's another thing to consider. People in cities have a smaller personal space because we don't have as much personal space. Somebody living in the province or a countryside would have more personal space. They sit further apart. If you sit closer to a country person, they're going to be slightly more awkward. Just like if you sit further away from somebody who lives in a city because they're used to people sitting with them. That's how it is. So the knuckle grinder is the kind of handshake that comes from an aggressive person where they're trying to show off how strong they are. And equally, somebody who reaches out, keeps you at the distance. It's a way of showing they don't really want you there. Okay? The fingertip grip is like the stiff arm thrust that has missed the mark. The user mistakenly grabs the person's fingers, even though the initiator may appear to have been keen and enthusiastic, attitude towards the receiver. In fact, he lacks confidence in himself. Now, this is when someone reaches out, grabs your fingertips. Women do this a lot. It's a kind of normal female shaking of hands because it's just genteel and it's awkward and it's polite and it shows submission. We see it less today, but it's still used quite a bit, even in business. Right, like the stiff arm thrust, the main aim of the fingertip grab is to keep the receiver at a comfortable spatial distance. So pulling the receiver into the initiator's territory can mean one of two things. First, the initiator is an insecure type who feels safe only within his own personal space. Or second, the initiator is from a culture that has a small intimate zone and is behaving normally. So again, as I said before, this is words, not a sentence. Take all of these things together and try and work out what's really going on. Don't take one gesture on its own. This is a gesture for lying. If someone rubs their nose, it means they're lying. But it also might mean that they've got an itchy nose. If they do that and then cover their mouth, it's a sign that they're being dishonest. All of these things add up. The intention of the double-handed handshake is to show sincerity, trust, or depth of feeling towards the receiver. Two significant elements should be noticed. First, the left hand is used to communicate the extra feeling that the initiator wishes to transmit, and its extent is related to the distance that the initiator's left hand is moved up the receiver's right arm. The elbow grasp, so grasping up as far as the elbow, for example, transmits more feeling than the wrist hold, and the shoulder hold transmits more than the upper arm grip. Secondly, the initiator's left hand represents an invasion of the receiver's intimate and close intimate zone. In general, the wrist hold and the elbow grip are acceptable only when close friends and relatives, and in these cases, the initiator's left hand penetrates only the receiver's intimate zone. Now, the intimate zone is your personal space. The more they invade into your personal space, it's a friendly gesture, but it's also an aggressive attack if it's from someone you don't know. If I shook your hand and then grabbed your shoulder, especially if I was a man and we're talking about a younger woman, it's pretty aggressive. It's touching your body. The further we go up the arm, it's getting close to a hug, and hugs aren't welcome from strangers. Okay? So it's an invasion of your personal space. Where are we going? The shoulder hold and the upper arm grip enter the receiver's close intimate zone and involve actual body contact. This should be used only between people who experience close emotional bond at the time of the handshake. If I was to go home to England and meet my brother, then yeah, I'd shake his hand, grab his shoulder, and probably would end up hugging as well. And that would be normal. It's not normal when a politician does it to another man, a woman, or in Joe Biden's case, a small child who he then kisses. This should be used only between people who experience close emotional bonds at the time. Unless the extra feeling is mutual, the initiator does not have a good reason for using a double-handed handshake, because the receiver will become suspicious and mistrust the initiator's intentions. It's quite common to see politicians greeting voters and see people greeting their new clients with a double-handed handshake without realizing this can be a social suicide. I think it's more commonly known now, but yeah, this is all good stuff. Knowing this will put you in control of your greeting. And as it says in there, practice doing some handshakes so that you know what you're doing. Okay, now move on to the questions. The text document is on the Google Classroom. If you've got the book, then go back and answer questions 1 through 14. Do the answers in a minute.